What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Mika, once again joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, we are back after a more back and forth Lions game than I was expecting, or a more intense game than I was expecting, because you and I both kind of again went through both teams or went through the Bears and kind of talked about what we expected. I don't think either one of us expected like, hey, the Lions were going to need a fourth quarter comeback to be able to, get over on the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, it was unexpected for several reasons, right? Like, I don't think anyone expected the Lions to turn the ball over four times against the Bears, just because they're not really, they haven't been a turnover prone team up to this point, really. So that was bad. And then they weren't really playing complementary football. Although I think the defense played pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah.
Uh, the Bears, up until that point, hadn't really run a lot of that read option stuff they were running with Justin Fields. They when they started 0-4 before he got banged up and hurt, so they pivoted back to that read option heavy scheme that they had been running last year when Fields was running crazy everywhere. And the Lions and Aaron Glenn, I thought, adapted pretty quickly. They went with another down lineman and just started to not ask guys to two gap as much, right? Because you're putting so
Yeah.
much stress on them with an athlete like Fields. So, but yeah, it was a crazy game, man. That was a fun one to be at. Stressful but fun at the end of the day.
Yeah, I kind of said it in my recap yesterday. It's probably a game that I would describe as a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of game, because for a large majority of that game, it wasn't good. Like, I feel like three-quarters of that game, even though the Lions were up at halftime, I still felt like three-quarters of this game just wasn't good Lions football. But you got one amazing fourth quarter where it's like, this is the team that we've grown accustomed to. So with that said, we're going to jump into, some of the top plays or some of the biggest moments that we kind of felt that, came up in this game. And Morgan, we finally get to talk about somebody that we haven't talked about in a couple weeks because, obviously he had to deal with some injuries, but seems like, coming into this Bears game, he finally kind of got back. And I'm talking about Brian Branch getting back to playing how he was, those first couple weeks of this NFL season.
Yeah, it was good to see Branch back and making plays, and he's been a key part of the defense, even when he hasn't necessarily been making like a lot of plays that show up in the box score. Like, he's still playing at a really, really high level. But yeah, this is a great play here. He's lined up heads up with Darnell Mooney in the slot there. And it's just like he has a beat on it the whole time. You can kind of see him peeking into the backfield pre-snap. And as soon as the ball snapped, you'll see him just shuffle his feet and dart in the backfield.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a guy that, I
Huge.
mean, again, in the draft process, a lot of people had questions about his 40 time, about, if he had enough quickness or enough agility to, play in the NFL. But so far, like, again, when he's been healthy, I don't think it's ever really been a question, right?
No. And I'm sure Brad Holmes is sitting there thinking, I told you so, right? To a lot of people that passed on Brian Branch. And, as we know, he had him rated, the Lions and Brad Holmes and everyone else, they had him rated really highly on their draft board. So, yeah, they were thrilled to get him, even though, it was, what is it, 45, Miko?
Yeah.
45th
Or I think
overall.
they,
So
was it at 45, or I think they traded down or something like that and still were able to get him.
they
Um,
traded so many times that day, but yeah, he's been so good, and honestly, he could end up making the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Like, that's just the kind of the plays he's been making.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about this play is we get to see a lot of the things that, again, that make Brian Branch really good. It's his play recognition, right? So how smart he is, which is one of the things that he was highly touted for in Alabama, but also his tackling, which was probably like the thing that I loved most about him coming into the NFL was like, dude, this, if he gets you in his arms, more than likely he's bringing you to the turf. And this is one element of his game where it's just like, yo, like that is something I feel like I can always kind of count on with Brian Branch. The Lions only had 8 tackles for loss. He had 3 of them. Like that's so impressive from your nickel. Not a linebacker, not a defensive end, not a D tackle. This was your nickel back coming up and making plays in the backfield.
Yeah, and that's just the chops he's shown since he showed up at Alabama as a freshman, right? Like you don't start for Nick Saban as a freshman unless you have your stuff together and you are, doing what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I'm. It's been great, man. I really he's quickly become one of my favorite players on the team. Yeah, you can tell he's got a chip on his shoulder, right, Miko? Like he's
Yeah.
got some stuff to prove.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think like again, the Lions still have plenty of games left in the season. I'm not sure what the, defensive rookie of the year race looks like right now because I mean, I think there's so many good defensive rookies this year. But I think Brian Branch has an opportunity over the next couple weeks if he can still continue to stack up games like that one, where he's getting tackles for losses, he's getting PBUs, he's racking up tackles, he's lining up all over the field. He can still kind of keep his name in contention when it comes down to the end of the year. He may need a few more turnovers, he may need a sack or two, but I think he can kind of get those types of things as long as he continues to play at a high level.
Yeah, definitely, Miko. And that he's become one of the players that just doesn't come off the field when he's healthy, which I love. Put your best players out there. Like guys like him don't need to leave the field. He can do so many different things in terms of where he's at in the secondary. And then even when they utilize him as essentially another off-ball linebacker, on
Yeah.
obvious passing downs, I love those sets too. So yeah, utilize the skills that your guys have, and that's what the Lions defense is doing. And I give them credit for adjusting against the Bears, man, because that's a tough offense to slow down. It
Yeah.
really is, because Fields is probably the fastest athlete on the field when he's out there. So it really, puts stress on the guys who are the contained players like the Derek Barnes of the world and Hutch. And so there were instances here and there, but they were more so Fields scrambling on passing concepts more than he wasn't really breaking off chunks when they were doing designed runs. So that was
Yeah.
encouraging.
No, absolutely. Especially later in the game. Like early in the game, yes, they got him a couple times. There's a couple plays where you can see whether it's like you said, Hutch, Derek Barnes. I think Jack Campbell got kind of frozen on a play, and that's
Mm-hmm.
I don't even necessarily, again, fault the defense per se in those situations, especially someone, a rookie like Jack Campbell. That's just how explosive and how dynamic Justin Fields can be in the open field, and which is why typically you try to do your work early. Um, but
Yeah.
speaking of doing your work early, Jared Goff had a difficult time with that. I think in this game, right? Kind of a slower start than we're accustomed to him, having so far in the season. I think he's only had throughout the season to this point, he's only had like a couple two turnover games. I think he's only had one, in fact. Um, but going into this one looked rough, especially in the first half. And the first interception that he threw, I kind of said it yesterday. I give him a mulligan on it, right? Sam gets bumped on his route. And clearly Jared's expecting him to be at a certain spot. He throws the ball. Sam's not there. It's an easy pick. The second one is so much harder to defend for me, Morgan, because yes, the pass is tipped, but as you guys are going to see in this play, this doesn't look like a ball that Jared should have ever thrown. And if he was going to throw it, he should have thrown it at a different point in this route so that it wasn't going to be an interception.
Yeah, Miko, definitely. There's several things wrong here and that go wrong here for the Lions, and the first is going to be just Goff seemed like a beat behind on Sunday against the Bears. Like it was just like everything was happening a tick too late. So he's working through his progressions, and he's trying to get to Donovan Peoples-Jones coming in over on the inbreaker. And if he throws it early, I think there has a chance of getting there. But yeah, at the end of the day, this probably just needed to be checked down to Malcolm Rodriguez, which is funny to say out loud. But you can
Right?
kind of, you can see Goff when he first tries to pump fake, or when he pulls the ball back. I want to say he was targeting Malcolm as the check down just to get the ball out of his hands, but yeah, he double clutches it, and then when he does let it go, is that you said that's T.J. Edwards, right?
Yeah, TJ Edwards, yeah, that gets this pick.
Yeah, so he's reading. You can see Edwards on the next on the other view. He's reading Goff's eyes the whole time, so he literally follows him from right to left. And by the time Goff does cut this one loose, it's unfortunately too late.
Yeah, and it's something that you kind of hear, NFL commentators typically say, or especially like if it's someone like Tony Romo or something like that, like, hey, the last thing you want to do is throw a pass over the middle late. And so, like, that's one of the big mistakes that Jared Goff makes here. I don't think, again, going through that progression, I don't think he was necessarily wrong to target, DPJ in this situation, but this ball has to come out quicker than when it does. And I think, Morgan, you kind of brought it up earlier. When he initially pump fakes this, there's a very small window that Jared Goff could have thrown this through. And it's right around like where this X mark is, where if he had thrown this a little bit earlier, he probably meets DPJ, right here, and it's probably a really tough catch. It's probably going to have to be on a complete rope, but it's much better than delivering it where he does, where again he's like kind of almost like expecting DPJ to get to a certain landmark, and I think he completely lost sight of TJ Edwards in this situation, um, and thus it leads into a pretty bad interception.
Yeah, and there's pressure in his lap, so I understand that aspect of it. 95 gets a pretty good, or yeah, 95 gets a pretty good rush against Taylor Decker. Excuse me. But yeah, you're right, Miko. If Goff has made these throws as of late this season, like throwing with anticipation, throwing guys open. So I want to give him his credit there. But yeah, this wasn't one of those instances. He just had a tough day in terms of staying on schedule. It just, like I said, seemed like he was just a tick behind for most of the afternoon until the very end of the game, thankfully.
Yeah, and obviously, finishing the game with three interceptions for the day, it definitely just felt like everything was kind of starting to snowball for him a little bit. Obviously, he was able to get it together, as the game went on, as they got closer, deeper into the fourth quarter. Um, but I mean, I guess I'll ask you this: having a game like this for Jared Goff, where he does throw three picks, one of them, again, like we said, we can probably just write off as just like, hey, this kind of happens when a guy is bumped off his route and things of that nature. The other two are bigger head scratchers. Is there any level of concern for you that like, hey, you know, he maybe he's forcing it a little bit, or maybe he's not as in tune as he should be, um, or as he has been to this point in the season?
No, no, like ongoing concern. Like during that day, I was concerned because after the
Yeah,
second one, I looked at some of my boys and my friends sitting in the section, and I'm like, man, this might not be good because usually, as of late, he's made like one bad mistake and then he bounces back pretty quickly. Like the next drive, they go score, which is it's refreshing because you're like, okay, like that's you have to be that way as a quarterback. Not everything's gonna be perfect,
sure.
especially when you push the ball down the field. Like everybody throws interceptions, so no ongoing concern. Just hopefully he can be. That was his mulligan for the year because I had to be reminded on Twitter. Even the goats have really bad days here and there. So I guess we shouldn't expect Goff to not have a dud, once in a while. But yeah, at least the team picked him up because again, I know people were piling on the defense, but man, four turnovers and they allowed 26 points.
I was
I'll
gonna
take
say
it.
like it could have been so much worse, and especially once they got into that fourth quarter, where again holding the Bears to field goals, or essentially the Bears electing to kick field goals instead of being a little more aggressive at certain times. Um, that's a huge credit to the defense, right? Like the fact that they kept them out of the end zone, that they weren't allowing them to just march up and down the field and take those turnovers and immediately turn them into 7 points.
Yeah, and it was a good day. Just something to keep in mind because I feel like the defense gets a lot of heat on social media and everything else just because it's an offensive league, people. But yeah, the Bears definitely helped. I think I'm gonna have to call Matt Eberflus Courage the Cowardly Dog for a while now because that was a cowardly field goal. I was when they
Yeah,
kicked that, I was like, okay, the hope is alive. I don't ever leave my seat until 0-0-0. I'm superstitious. I'm not gonna leave, but a lot of people were leaving and they kicked that field goal, and I was like, well, we got a little bit of a window now.
yeah. I mean, it's a moment where Jared Goff can kind of show what he's made of, right? If he's really taking that step that we all assume that he has, but again, they haven't been put into a lot of situations like this, especially this year where they've had to make a fourth quarter comeback where you're down by two scores, and I kind of said, like, again, I keep referencing the video I did yesterday. I apologize, but if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. Um, I said this yesterday. I don't think there's like a better way you could have written up this comeback than with this next play that we're about to look at with Jared Goff linking up with JMO for this 32-yard touchdown. With all the question marks, with all the all the doubters about that are out there in regards to JMO and people who have questioned the chemistry between he and Goff, for this to be the play that gets them like, all right, they're only, I think they were like only 4 points, behind at that point after this touchdown or something like that. Um, it was just like you couldn't draw this up better. You couldn't write a better script if you wanted to than for these two to connect in this kind of play to basically make the game a lot closer.
Yeah, man, this is awesome to see. JMO is out there a lot too. I don't have his snaps in front of me, but it
Oh, I
was
think I
his high.
saw it. It was like 65%.
Yeah, it was high. Like it was his highest of the season. Like he was out there a lot. So I'm happy with that. And this isn't the first time. Like Goff's been going to him in like gotta have it situations more often, which I really like because it
Mm-hmm.
shows that he's trusting him. Goff is definitely a quarterback. He doesn't just start throwing it to you right away. You got to like kind of earn it a little bit with him. So I like this design by Ben Johnson. It's what's essentially a flood concept. You're going to have Brock Wright go in motion, so he's going to be up there with JMO and St. Brown. I really like too that Ben Johnson. I saw this a lot just on my first watch with JMO and Saint. They often had them stacked together, which man, that just puts a stressor on your defense for sure. So yeah, they're going to run a flood concept. Brock Wright's going to get into the flat basically and be the short. Saint is going to run a corner and be your intermediate option, and then JMO runs what is essentially a go, but kind of towards the back pylon. And yeah, this is a good throw by Jared. And like we talked about before at the top, Miko, the way Eddie Jackson played this and was just caught flat-footed, you can't do that against someone who like JMO who has like legitimately like world-class speed.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and like slow this down for you guys because again, like Morgan said, when he and I talked about this, we were just kind of like flabbergasted by like, okay, JMO gets a full head of steam, obviously coming out of his stance, and it's like, okay, as a safety, you're typically thought when you're in zone coverage, right, deeper than the deepest. You're trying to stay as deep as you possibly can so that even if they do decide to throw a bomb, you can at least be in position to contest. JMO gets to about the 23-yard line before Eddie Jackson ever decides to really start taking his coverage pretty serious. And you can kind of see here, like, okay, he's starting to kind of start to backpedal. And then it's like by the time JMO reaches the 20, he's like, oh snap, I gotta go. Like I gotta get there. And it's already too late. Like you've lost at this point because this is a real speedster. This isn't, obviously JMO didn't get to run the 40 because he was, recovering from his ACL, but like this is the dude that was probably going to run in the low 4.3s, maybe even a 4.2, right? That's what he kind of thinks. You can't afford to be lazy coming out of your breaks if you're expecting to cover the deep part of the field and with this guy.
No, absolutely, Miko. And if you ask JMO, he will most certainly tell you it's going to be in the 4.2s. And he's a strider, man. Like once that gate opens up, he's just covering so much ground. And yeah, if you're barbecue chicken, if you're flat-footed and he's got a full head of steam, and like you're like Eddie Jackson's a good athlete too, like a really good
Yeah,
athlete.
really
But
good
yeah,
safety.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
this is
So
very uncharacteristic of him and his play. And the only thing I could think of, and you and I were kind of talking about this, is like you said, they ran enough of these like stat concepts where I think Eddie Jackson had probably got to the point like, man, they're never going to throw this deep. They're never going to throw this go route on this type of combination. They've been hitting Saint on this all the time, so like, hey, as long as Jalen Johnson has Saint, like we're good. And it just didn't work out that way. Like you said, Goff gets a perfect pocket in this situation. He gets to go through his progression. He gets to hit that back foot, and he sees Eddie Jackson flat foot, and it's like, oh, well, then my dude won.
yeah, and like JMO said. He got Saint told him before the play, like, get ready, it's coming. And so I thought that was really cool because that just shows like they're building camaraderie. But yeah, man, I'm excited because you get JMO more of the snap share. Goff starts to trust him more. Like he had another catch, which was a big catch, if I'm not mistaken, over the middle against the Bears, where he got
Yeah,
whacked too. Like, and he
yeah,
held on
another
to
big
it.
crosser for him.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. And that was a tough catch, and he got hit. Like that wasn't a very friendly throw from Goff there. I was like, come on, man.
No, I
Um,
think Jaquan Brisker got him, and I was like, like that's a
no, Brisker can hit too. That's what I'm saying. I was like, dang, I did not like that. But yeah, it's exciting to see because the more Goff trusts him, and it seems like he's starting to trust him a whole heck of a lot. Probably, not with Saint obviously yet, but yeah, it'll be good to see because I do think Goff gets a little bit of tunnel vision to Saint, which I don't blame him with the
no.
production. But yeah,
But I mean, yeah, like to have like to think about it in the fact that like he has Saint that essentially can get open at will. Um, Sam, who's getting there even as a rookie, and obviously he didn't have as quite the type of game as he's been having, against the Bears, but still had a couple really clutch catches. We know how much he trusts Josh Reynolds in gotta have it type situations. If JMO can become that, where listen, I trust you just as much, not just for the deep touchdown routes, but also like I know I can trust you to run this route across the middle, that you're not going to shy away from contact. And if I lay it out there and it's just right that you're going to go and make a play, that's only going to help this offense even more.
yeah, and what's cool about JMO and the thing I've like realized watching him in live and then like watching film is it's gonna sound weird, but like you saw how fast he was even when you were doing slow motion here on the video. Like he's that fast. So you see these clips of like the Tyreek Hills of the world not really making like a ton of contested catches. It's because they're always so open. And
Mm-hmm.
like these JMO touchdowns that we see, he's always really open. And Goff almost like that was a good throw because JMO was running out of real estate. But yeah, you're gonna be like I want them to get more in sync of like, I'm going to throw this up and I want you to run under it because
Yeah,
it's a safe shot. Either I'm going to miss you long or, whatever, to the side maybe, but
yeah.
it's not going to be a pick. It's just going to be like, that's what I want more of because if once they unlock that and safeties and, coordinators and coaches are thinking about that consistently, oh man, this like, we
Well,
might
it
see another
also
level.
we all, and this is like the last thing I'll say about this, and we can move on to the next play. But like, it also opens up the underneath stuff, right? Because as much as Tyreek, like, if you think about it, Tyreek was initially like made his waves in Kansas City by being a deep threat, right? Like they would target him because he would outrun coverages, he'd outrun double teams, and then he gets to Miami, and they target him on everything because they
Mm-hmm.
know he has that type of quickness where it's like if we get him on a slant, we get him on an over route, we get him on any type of crossing pattern on top of any of these deep routes, he can outrun whatever corner is covering him. JMO just has to build up that repertoire, right? He just has to build up that level of his game and that level of trust with him in Goff where Ben Johnson will call those types of plays where it's like, yo, we're gonna send JMO on more crossing routes, we're gonna send him on more slants because we know that like he's gonna win off the line. And once he gets 5 yards into a route, he's gonna break that off and win.
Yeah. And you become a friendly target for a quarterback because you don't have a defender like draped right on you necessarily. Like they might be like a step behind you, and it just becomes it's just the easier, less
Mm-hmm.
stressful throw for a quarterback, like over the middle per se, like you said, Miko. So absolutely, good point.
All right, guys. So the last play that we got, obviously, we have to break down probably the biggest play of the game. Lions were already up, right? Got their touchdown from David Montgomery. It's a 3-point game. Bears get their final possession of the game. And Morgan, like obviously, like I have no way of proving this because I'm not the type of person that typically like tweets live a ton. But as I was sitting at home getting ready for this play, I was like, this would be a great series for Aiden to come alive. Like he had been very quiet all game, not really doing a whole lot as far as, the stat sheet was concerned. And I was like, this would be the perfect time, right? Like he has to come alive. He has to do something. He has to make this drive difficult. He didn't need a drive. He needed one play and called ball game.
Yeah, and only a 3-point game at this point, so I was pretty nervous to be honest still, just because like I was excited for the touchdown from Demo and everything, but they still needed to get a stop. Bears had 2 timeouts. This could be a situation where they call a passing play, and Fields escapes and runs for 30 yards because he's that fast. So, excuse me. Yeah, I was excited to see the quick win, like we talked about, right, Miko?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you've been watching, the last couple of like top plays, type of videos that we've covered and we've talked about Aiden, that's one of the biggest things that we've kind of harped on him, and not trying to be overly critical, but it's just like he has to be able to win quicker in his pass rush, because sometimes he takes the long route to trying to get to the quarterback. And this is the NFL. Guys are getting the football out in under 3 seconds. You can't take that long trying to get to the quarterback. And that's not what happens here. This is a quick, like, meet Justin Fields at the top of his drop or at the end of his drop, and get the ball out.
Yeah, and it was not a lot of wasted motion from Hutch, right? Like he immediately wins the outside shoulder against Darnell Wright, who's playing really well this year. I want to say, like,
I was gonna say he played
yeah,
really well against Hutch. Like,
yeah,
I know this is the play that a lot of people are gonna remember, but he played Hutch really well for a majority of this game. 95% of this game, he played him really well.
yeah. He's going to be a really good player for a long time in this division. Unfortunately for the Lions, but yeah, he's fun to watch when it's not against your team. But yeah, once Hutch wins this outside shoulder, he doesn't waste many steps. Just runs that beeline, like you said, to Fields, and once Wright gets that shoulder turned and he's just wide open that early in the rush, it's over because Hutch is able just to rip under it a little bit. And yeah, so he starts with a long arm, that shoulder opens, and then he eventually works to a rip. And then good job staying, like good leverage, right? Like we've talked about before, like I would love to see more reps like where he is. This is pretty bendy for a 6'6" guy or whatever he's
Yeah.
listed at. So yeah, this is a really good rep, man. And I was happy when this happened because then I was like, all right, I can finally relax for the first time in like 3.5 hours.
Oh yeah, because I mean, again, Justin Fields is he's not Lamar Jackson, right? But he has those types of athletic traits where you feel like, man, if the Lions aren't going to get to him, anything can happen. Like when you have that much time, when you have that much space, when you have that much athleticism, freaky things can happen. Um, but again, this is what I think the Lions ultimately need down the rest of the rest of the season. Is they need their best players to have big moments like this. I don't need Hutch to get, a strip sack every single snap, but you need more of this. You do need it, to show up once or twice throughout a 4-quarter game.
Yeah, you definitely do. And especially if we talked about it, like if he's going to be considered among, the elites of the elite in like pass rushing, categories. So yeah, more of those wins would be nice for sure. Like just a quick, no nonsense, straight to the quarterback, get the ball out.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what those really elite, edge rushers do on a, more consistent basis is win like that. Right, Miko?
Yeah, like again, being able to diversify his pass rush, which he's done a better job at, but again, understanding like nuances, right? The benefit of attacking an outside shoulder, and understanding how that can give you a quicker path to the quarterback than trying to just beat them up field and think that you're going to counter back inside. And then being able to again expand it even more, where if you attack the outside shoulder and the tackle is there, being able to not get too deep into your rush where you can stop, restart, and fight back inside. Like Hutch's biggest thing that I think he's really going to have to improve on going into year 3, and even still like over the next couple of weeks, is just understanding depth and understanding counters a little bit better. Because if he's able to master those things, any other like athletic deficiency that he might have, whether it's bend, whether it's quickness or things like that, can be voided just by him understanding, having a better plan getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, excellent points. And I think that showed some situational awareness there from Hutch because, I'm assuming they knew that Fields was going to take a deeper drop just because they likely were going to throw the ball with, depending because of the time, there was like 20 something seconds left, 29 seconds left on the clock, I
29
want to say.
seconds, yeah.
So yeah, good situational awareness, and that just shows growth as a pass rusher, right? Like that's, the greats are great because they have elite athletic traits, but then they're also great because the little things like that, and just, make life a little easier for yourself.
Yeah. And so I think like that play, the Jared Goff play, those two things in my mind just show the maturity of this team, right? It maybe isn't going to be pretty, for four full quarters the rest of the way, the rest to the end of the season. But if these guys can still grasp those types of moments, take advantage of teams that leave the door open, they're going to continue to win games like this. Hopefully just not as many, late fourth quarter comebacks because I don't think my heart can take it.
No, that was so stressful. And they really haven't had a ton of stressful games this year, which has been nice, honestly, because the stressful games are fun after the fact, but during you're like, this is terrible.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
You eventually have to like reconsider everything that you've been thinking about this team in the midst of a game. And then they win, and then it's just like I don't know how to feel about anything because my emotions were at an all-time high for the last three quarters. So I don't know, man. I love the plays that we picked out. I think this team is doing a lot of really good things. They have another opportunity to even showcase even more so that they learn from those mistakes as they play against Green Bay this week on Thanksgiving. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this team to continue to make that push. They're currently second in the NFC, sitting at 8-2. It would be awesome to see this team finish, 12 plus games. And I think like they have a really good shot of doing that this year.
I think so too. It's definitely realistic. Like it's within. I mean, if they finish 12-5, that means they'll have gone what, 4-3 over the next 7 games.
Yeah.
So shoot, I think they should want to win. I would love 13 or 14, to be honest. Just secure that second seed, and like you said, I hope we don't have many more 4 turnover performances on the horizon. But if they don't do that, there aren't many games where they're not going to be in it just because they're really talented, they're well coached, and you put those two things together and good things happen.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Those are going to do it for all the plays that we highlighted. But let us know in the comment section below if there was a play that you really loved that we didn't get to talk about. Let us know in the comment section below what play that was. And overall, just like how you feel about this team going forward. Like Morgan said, we have 7 more games to go. What do you think the Lions finish at the end of this? Is there any other team that you're kind of concerned about? Let us know all of that in the comment section below. Also, if you're looking for any more news, updates, or anything like that regarding the Detroit Lions, you can always head over to pridedetroit.com where you can find any new articles that we're uploading. We're doing that multiple times throughout the day. So definitely make sure that you're tapping into the main website to stay up on all the latest news regarding the Lions. And last but not least, if you're enjoying the content here, if you want to be sure that you're staying plugged in, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified every time we upload a new video, every time we go live. I think the guy should be going live tonight to do First Bite or whenever this posts. So this might post, tomorrow. So we might be going live tomorrow because I think it's Madden Sim. Whatever the case may be, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified of all the new content that's coming to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. With that said, though, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. We'll catch you guys in the next one.